Look, I got a testimony. I gotta tell him what God did. I'm calling God the homie. He took me out of the mosh pit. I will contest the phony. Separate demons and God's kids. I gotta spread his word, so I'ma show you who the God is. The word is my weapon. I move like a general.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Walk With Me. I'm your host, JJ. Thank you so much for clicking on this podcast. Thank you for sharing this podcast. Thank you for talking about this podcast, wherever you talk about it to, because I know podcasts get talked about. Well, I don't care if you don't like it. If you like it, just thank you for talking about it. I'm your host, like I said, JJ, and we're going to get right into everything. A shout out to the sponsors, Exquisite Creations, making tumblers. She's going to be making t-shirts now. She's ever expanding. She's probably going to end up hiring people, which is really good. You always know when you're doing good in a business when you start needing help and you start realizing that you need help. But maybe she'll hire me. So maybe she'll hire me, and I could work with the most beautiful woman in the world. And also to shout out to True Bars, the lyricist, and he has a lot of beats and things like that. If you're looking to even start your own podcast, that's great. He'll set up your intro and outros, and he'll work with you. Look him up. I think you can get a hold of him on YouTube, and he's on Spotify and other platforms. We're going to get right into everything, so let's go ahead and take this walk. Now, if you're following us sequentially, then our last episode, we were talking about the morning when Lot left Sodom and Gomorrah. The angels got up and said, hey, you, your wife, and your daughters, let's go. Let's get. Right? This is Genesis chapter 19, verse 24 to 28. And as soon as this happened, as soon as Lot got far enough away, the Lord rained down upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew these cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the city, and all that grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Adam got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and all the plain, all the land of the plain, and beheld the smoke of the country that went up as smoke as furnace. Let's stop right there, because those 4 verses said a volume. We could talk about those 4 verses from now until next week. But so much was said without being said. First of all, fire and brimstone came out of heaven. Now, some people tried to come at me and say, well, Sodom and Gomorrah got hit by a meteor. Okay, well, is that not fire and brimstone? Didn't things burn up if that happened? But it didn't happen, because otherwise Lot would have been dead too. It wasn't a meteor that hit Sodom and Gomorrah. This was a targeted strike from God to Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, I don't know. Don't ask me how far Lot had gotten away. But it couldn't have been very far, because when we talk about human beings, our eyesight, we don't see very far. We think we see far, but we don't really see very far when it comes to other animals. And Lot's wife could turn around and see the destruction of the city. Let me stop right here for station identification. It wasn't because Lot's wife turned around and saw the destruction. That had nothing to do with it. Well, what do you mean, JJ? Because in verse 27, and Abraham, I keep saying that. And Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he saw what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. So it wasn't the fact that Lot's wife was just curious and turned around and was like, wow, that's some destruction. There was something else going on in Lot's wife that caused her to be turned into a pillar of salt? First of all, she was coming behind Lot. Now, I don't know, and this is where the book of JJ has to take over. And please take what I say, I'm going to say with a grain of salt. But please take what I say here with a grain of salt. Because this is the book of JJ, but this is where I was talking about the Bible saying a lot of things without saying it. If I'm running away from something with my wife and my kids, the daughters made it, I'm pulling them. I'm going to have to pull them. I could probably outrun them, but I'm pulling them like, let's go. Let's get out of here. Let's move. I wonder if Lot's wife snatched away from Lot and turned and looked behind her. I wonder if there was something that Lot's wife was leaving in Sodom and Gomorrah that she really wanted to keep. Wondering if there was a situation, maybe an extramarital affair, that she was leaving in Sodom and Gomorrah that she wanted to keep. I was wondering if some kind of situation, or maybe a material thing, maybe a certain pair of boots, God forbid those boots, or maybe a certain pair of boots that she really wanted to save, but they're still in Sodom and Gomorrah and she didn't have time to grab them. I was wondering what it is that made her turn around, because it wasn't the fact that she saw Sodom and Gomorrah getting destroyed, because Abraham saw Sodom and Gomorrah getting destroyed and nothing happened to him. When Lot's wife turned around, I can almost guarantee you the two daughters probably turned around too, because they knew, without it being said, that Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. So they had to have seen what was going on. But something was different with Lot's wife. So, and this thing, and please understand, in verse 28 says a whole lot, because just a few moments ago, when Lot decided, Lot had split from Abraham, he had all the sheep, he had all the herdsmen, and he looked at, the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah and saw how well watered it was, and how abundant, grass and stuff was, the feeding flocks and things like that. The Bible made sure to mention that all the land of the plain was destroyed. Everything that grew there was destroyed. That place was turned into a huge, burning, smoking ruin. How terrible is that? How terrible is that? I mean, we see images of, say, 9/11, and we saw the buildings. We saw the buildings hit, we saw them burn, and then we saw them fall. And then for many days afterwards, we saw smoke coming out of those buildings. And I'm using this as a kind of an example. Now, just imagine two neighboring cities this happening to. Like Kansas City. You got Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. These two cities are close together. Minneapolis, St. Paul. These are actually two cities that are close together. And where I grew up in Gary, you had Gary and you had Hammond and you had all these cities real close together, and you could see from afar off in Abraham's situation, you could see from afar off that both of these cities were utterly destroyed and burning, and smoke was rising from them. And there was nothing. There was no water left in that plain to put those fires out. In 2 Peter 2:6, it says, in the turning of cities, Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making an example unto those thereafter that should live ungodly. I mean, just imagine that scene, how bad it was. The fact that just a moment ago it was a bustling metropolis, and then all of a sudden, fire and brimstone fell out of the sky. and only hit that area. Because remember now, Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters were probably on foot. And I say probably because they didn't have a lot to go, to grab. Lot was sitting in the gate when the angels walked up. So it's really important to understand when we're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. A lot of times we want to only talk about the homosexuality that was in Sodom and Gomorrah. We only want to talk about that as Christians. Please understand that Sodom and Gomorrah was not just about homosexuality. It was not just about promiscuity. It was not just about sexual sin. Yes, this was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. But remember, Lot had been very successful with Abraham. Lot had been very successful with Abraham, even though it wasn't God's perfect will that Lot was even with Abraham. God didn't tell Abraham to take Lot with him. But Abraham said, "Hey, I want to reach back and bring someone with me," and that caused a little bit of an issue later on, to the point where Lot and Abraham had to separate, and Lot went back to the same situation that he was aware of, that he was comfortable with. Before Abraham left his country, he didn't have a lot. He didn't have a lot. And when we find Lot back in Sodom and Gomorrah, he also didn't have a lot. So it kind of alludes to a certain financial responsibility or a certain work ethic or something like that. He was sitting in the gate. He wasn't working. He was waiting for something. Or I don't know, you could say government handout. And this is all out of the book of JJ, and this is all about understanding what the Bible is saying without actually saying it. Because context is important. Lot tagged along with Abraham, got very successful, and then left that success and couldn't continue doing it on his own, even though he had motivations to continue that success. He had a wife. He had 2 daughters. He had tents. He had herds. He had herdsmen. He had lots of things going on. He had a full-time job. He had a business and was very successful in that business. And then such a short time later, you got Lot sitting in the gate. Well, the lepers and the poor people sit. The people are begging for money. There's people coming in and out of the city. This is a serious situation, because I wonder if that was part of the sin that God was upset about. People sitting there begging or robbing people or whatever that situation is. But maybe laziness was also a situation that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. Maybe a sense of entitlement was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm just suggesting this because I don't think it was just sexual sin, because a lot of cities, even today, would have had that same issue. Fire and brimstone would have come out of heaven and burned everything up. But in Peter, in 2 Peter, it just says living ungodly. And again, we like to, encapsulate it just in the sexual immorality that was going on, because it's easy to talk about that, but it's very difficult to talk about other things. It's very difficult to talk about the fact that when God called them out of that sin, whatever that sin was, out of that situation, there's a difference between Lot's wife and Abraham, and both of them saw the destruction that was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham stood before the Lord and saw the destruction. Lot's wife was running away and was behind Lot, not keeping up with Lot, and turned around and was turned into a pillar of salt. I don't know how long she was watching it. I don't know. She could have been turning around just for a glance. She could have turned around and just kind of longing looking back. She probably was, maybe she was thinking about Felipe, who was left back there. But whatever it was, God was mad at her for doing that and turned her into a pillar of salt. And Jesus will even say in when they were talking about the end times in the New Testament, remember Lot's wife. And that's all he said about the situation. Remember Lot's wife. He didn't talk about Abraham. He said, remember Lot's wife. So there was something going on in Lot's wife's heart. We don't even know what her name is. Now, I'm pretty sure you'll probably find somebody who will go out and look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and put this little mark with that little mark and give her a name. And I don't know. But it was so important that it wasn't mentioned in the Bible versions that we have. Her name was not mentioned. We don't know what her name is. All we know is she's Lot's wife. I mean, we kind of know Lot's daughters, and we know how Lot's daughters, how kind of twisted they were because of what they did after. They went out, they said, hey, let's get our father drunk because we don't have any kids. Remember, Lot said, my daughters haven't known men. So the daughter said, when he dies, he's not going to have any heirs. So instead of saying, hey, let's move to another city and let's find some husbands and let's get him some grandbabies, they said, no, let's get him drunk and have sex with him. This is the mentality that was so abundant in that city, which actually speaks to a whole lot more of, hey, stop trying to figure out problems on your own because you're probably going to, come up with the wrong solution. And they got Lot drunk and they had sex with him and they bore kids. And that's going to be, I hadn't actually planned on talking about this, but that is Genesis 19 and 30. And Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him, for he feared to dwell in Zoar. He dwelt in the cave, he and his 2 daughters. So they went to a different city, and instead of going into the city, they dwelt in the mountain. God have a problem with, and God doesn't have a problem with you dwelling in the mountains because you're away from the city. Because especially, this had to be a very traumatic thing for Lot. God have a problem with that. But, so then, his firstborn, he had his 2 daughters with him. His firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. In other words, there's not a man that's going to want to get to know us. Because we're out here, way up in the mountain, by ourselves. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him and preserve seed of our father. Again, you literally turned around and you recognized the situation and you thought of a solution that will create a lot more problems. Oh, what do you mean a lot more problems? They just wanted to make sure they had kids. Well, these 2 kids will grow up to be Moab and Ammon. And that is where a whole lot more problems are going to start. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, behold, last night I lay with my father. Let's get him drunk again, and let's do this again. And verse 35, they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him. He perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. And they were both the daughters of Lot, with child by their father. Now tell me there's not some sickness going on in that situation. The The same situation that they left in Sodom and Gomorrah, they brought with them. Sometimes God will deliver you from a situation, but you will continue to bring that same that same mentality with you, even though you got delivered from it. Lot's wife got delivered, and she didn't make it because she couldn't leave any part of Sodom and Gomorrah behind. The daughters got delivered, but they still had a little piece of what Sodom and Gomorrah was about in their hearts to kind of get them to think like this. And the firstborn daughter, what's their name? I don't know. Firstborn bare a son and called his name Moab. The same is the father of the Moabites to this day. Now we will hear a lot about the Moabites later on. And the younger, she also bare a son, and she called his name Ben-Ammi. This is verse 38. And the same is the father of the children of Ammon unto this day. 2 more bad decisions. Now we've just had 3 bad decisions with ridiculously long consequences. We had Adam. We had Adam making a bad decision, and that pretty much just, sent us down this path that we're on. We had Abraham, who made a bad decision and went and had a child with Hagar, and that Ishmael became the father of what we call Muslims today. And listen, let me just stop right here. Because somebody said to me, well, JJ, it sounds like you're against Muslims. No. I've met a lot of Muslim people that are very sweet, very wonderful people. That's how, when you talk to them about Abraham, they refer to Abraham as being their father. And there's only two sons that Abraham had, and that was Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, so this is why the issue of the Holy Land is such a big fight between them, because they both recognize that promise. They both recognize that inheritance as their own. And now you have 2 more really bad decisions having generational consequences, all because when they were delivered from that sin and debauchery and whatever, and you just go down the list of the things that they were delivered from inside of Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot's 2 daughters gave birth to nations named Moab and Ammon. And those decisions will have generational consequences. Now, I don't say this to say you have to think about every little decision that you make, and every little decision must be poured over with a fine-tooth comb. But if you just follow the will of God and maybe just ask God, hey God, what decision should I make? Your decisions will have generational consequences. My decision will have generational consequences. As a matter of fact, be careful of idle words you say to God too, because those words will also have generational consequences. And so this is where we are. And we have now 2 nations being born that are going to harass the children of Israel forever. So we're going to go ahead and stop it right here, because that was pretty deep. I know. It's just imagining everything that went on here and talking about everything that went on here. And I know you got a lot of Book of JJ in this one. And I generally try to stay out of the Book of JJ because that book doesn't exist. But just understanding that a lot of things that we go through, and this is applying these scriptures to our daily life, a lot of things that we go through are a result of our own bad decisions. God will allow us to make bad decisions. God will allow us to make good decisions. God will allow us to make bad decisions. However, God is still there for you. God will deliver you from your bad decision the same way he delivered Lot from Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, he just like, and we'll talk more about decisions that God will deliver you from if, you know, you give him a chance. You know, but God is there for us. God is there for you. Please understand. He loves you. He loves me. And he will visit you before he judges you. He'll visit you before he delivers you. The issue is making sure that you are in a spiritual place. And this is also something that a lot of people aren't talking about. Lot was in a spiritual place enough to know that it was God that was visiting him. But you ain't got to be perfect. It's not about being perfect. You know, God is perfect. You're not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. But just be so mindful of your spiritual condition. Be so mindful of the spiritual environment around you that you are aware when God is talking to you. And be ready to listen. Because a lot, I don't care how many things he had done wrong from the time he left Abraham to the night that the angels visited him. He was still ready to turn his back on that thing and walk away from it. And this is where we need to be. Always ready to follow God when he comes and knocks on the door and say, hey, you need to come with me. And that's where basically this podcast was born, was around that. Hey, come walk with me. Come walk with me over here. Oh man, I'm out of time. I can't believe I'm out of time. Okay, I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget, like, share, whatever is on your platform you're on. I know we're on iHeart, so you can share it. You can share it to social media. Whatever podcast platform you're on, I really do appreciate it. God bless you. I love you. See you next time.
Yeah. True. See, I do it for Jesus. Everything I've been do, give me a reason. I got to spread all the words of a genius. Everybody need to know who the leader. See, I do it for Jesus. Everything I've been do, give me a reason.